Hello, friends. I don't know about you, but since we've been told by our governor to shelter in place, I've been on a roller coaster of feelings. And yesterday, actually, I had a colleague share with me that she's actually in a state of feeling grief. And so I think many of us are unsure what's at the root of these feelings. And so perhaps if we talk about it, we can better manage it. And today, I'm so excited. We're going to turn to Dr. Yvonne Glass, the director of Ashland Theological Seminary's counseling program. It's so good seeing you, Yvonne. Welcome, and thank you so much for being a part of the Eagles for All conversation.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yvonne, I know you've been counseling. You've been in this kind of work for nearly 2 decades now. What are you noticing with mental health right now as people are experiencing this COVID-19 epidemic?
I think one of the things that I'm noticing is an increase in symptomology amongst those that already struggled with depression and anxiety. Because we are isolated and there's so much uncertainty that it is just adding to what they were already dealing with. And then for those that didn't struggle with depression and anxiety, because of everything that's going on and the isolation, we see people that normally would be pretty even keeled. They're starting to exhibit some signs of depression as they're isolated. And some anxiety over the reports and uncertainty of how long this is going on, what's happening, and how will it impact us in the long run.
That's such a good point. On this past week, we talked to Debbie Sullivan at Ashland, who's our director of our wellness program at the university, and she actually suggested to stop watching the news.
Yes.
Or to only watch it once a day. And I thought, oh, well, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So, and that's helped, not to watch it right before bed. Or I do feel the level of anxiety because that's all that we're seeing on the news. And even this morning, I was watching the Today Show, and Hoda Kaipu, who's one of my favorite reporters to watch in the morning, she broke down after an interview, and I thought, oh, my heart just broke for her. But I think a lot of people are feeling, there's this kind of roller coaster of feelings. Why do I feel this way? In ordinary situations when you're counseling, it's not like the one that we're currently experiencing. So as a counselor, what methods would you recommend today to all of our friends who are dealing with this kind of anxiety or even depression?
Mm-hmm. So the things that we normally recommend, like being part of a community, hanging out with friends and family, those are things that we just can't do right now. And so I'm grateful that it's 2020 instead of 1918, where we have technology at our fingertips, where we can do things like using Zoom and Skype and FaceTime and all of those things to help us connect with family that we normally wouldn't have been able to connect with in this time. I had my teenager call our parents and walk them through the steps of how to use video technology so that we can see them, so we can interact with them in that way, just because it's not safe for us to interact with them in the ways that we used to.
Yeah, we're seeing, I actually have joked with my sister and said, I've seen you more in the past week than I normally do, because we've been Zooming we've been FaceTiming so much. And
right.
And even with my parents, if we drop something off, we drop it off. We don't stay. And so I'm so thankful for technology and to be able, to see one another. It's not in person, but it's as close as it can be. So, my colleague who said to me, I feel like I'm grieving. When I think about grieving, Yvonne, I think about the process, of knowing that someone I love is going to pass away or has passed away. And that's what I think of grief. And we've talked about this difference between that kind of grief and then something that we're hearing about that people are calling anticipatory grief. Can you talk to us about what the difference is or what anticipatory grief means?
Mhm. So, anticipatory grief is usually associated when you have a loved one that has a terminal diagnosis. And so we are anticipating what that loss is going to be like. And there's all these little losses that lead up to the passing, and then all of the losses after. And so we're just in a place of uncertainty that creates all of these feelings like we are actually grieving. Some say it's more like a prolonged grief process, and it is very distinct from what happens after someone actually does pass away. Those are two separate types of grief. Sometimes people feel like, well, if I do anticipatory, then I won't do the other one. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And so what we see now is people in this uncertain times, because we are grieving things. We often associate grief with death, but we're experiencing all types of losses, like loss of our freedom, the ability to just go out and eat at a restaurant or to sit in a coffee shop. That's one of my favorite things to do, is early in the morning, sit in a coffee shop and get some reading and writing done. And I can't do that right now. Being able to go to the movies is part of the sacrifices that we're all making for the greater good. But then there's some anger that's associated with that as well. Like, why do we have to do this? And sometimes it's misplaced anger. And then there's emotional losses of not being able to do the things that we want to be able to do. It's really an in-between kind of place. Where you're just kind of stuck between what is reality as we know it and what's going to happen in the future. And so we're really trying to help people understand that a lot of the feelings that they're having are normal. Like, this is part of our new normal, because we don't know what's happening next. We don't know how long we'll be staying at home. We don't know how long our culture will be impacted by this. We don't know what our economy is going to look like after this. And those feelings of uncertainty that we are feeling, the angst, the anger, the irritability, the fear, the loneliness, those are all normal. It's part of this process.
I almost feel like I'm grieving just going to work, to see the people that I work with every day. We have a small team in Ashland, but it's a really tight-knit team. And so this morning we did a water cooler, or coffee. I think we called it a 15-minute coffee, which ended up being a 45-minute coffee. And it was one of our, Jason Miller, who's a major gift officer of ours. It was his birthday, so we sang happy birthday. It was kind of fun, but I could see, you can see people grieving over how long will this last? Will my kids get to go to school, back to school? What's happening with the stock market? I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. And to your point, I think there is a difference. And so recognizing it and talking about it is a great first step for all of us. When we were talking earlier this week, you talked about the paradigm of how we do life.
Yeah.
Explain what you mean by that.
Well, when I think about how we did life before COVID-19, it was just, everything was so fast. I know for myself, like, the kids were running them to activities, from activities, getting them up in the morning for school, and then going to work, and all of the little things that are big things and everything that's going. And now all of that's come to a screeching halt. And so now we are taking pause, not just for ourselves, but for others. I think we have more, our culture was one in which we did care about people, but I think this is causing us to care more. We just think about our population differently. I saw a video of one of the millennials are getting a bad rap. It's actually more Generation Z that's doing all the traveling. And there was this one college student that said his professor was struggling to teach to an empty classroom. And he's older and he doesn't really like the idea of doing Zoom. for his classroom. So he decided to record them, but then he didn't want to teach to an empty classroom. So he put a Pinocchio doll in the front row and then taught to the Pinocchio doll. And the kid said, for this man alone, I will do social distancing. Like, it's just a whole nother understanding of who it is that we care about and why we do what we do. And when I think about that, I'm like, okay, I get it. This is like, everyone's starting to get it. We're starting to have more of a, it's not just me, it's not just my close-knit circle, but we're all in this together. I think that's even one of the hashtags out there, in this together.
Yeah.
I think about those things. Yeah.
You know, I saw yesterday a minister was doing a sermon and he was saying, I can't do this. Like, it's so awkward to preach to an empty church. And
Yeah.
so he took pictures of all of the families and he taped them on the chairs. And I thought that was awesome. I thought,
Yeah.
you know, so he's still seeing them. And you have to really respect people who are a generation that's not as technologically savvy, although my kids would say I'm not.
Mine too.
You know, so yeah, it's how we do things, right?
Yeah.
Yvonne, tell me, what does the future look like?
I think our future is one where we won't be so fearful as we are now. There's a healthy level of fear that we all need to have, that's like built into all of us for survival. But I think what we'll see more is people appreciating life and just not taking things for granted. Yesterday, talk about visiting parents and dropping off groceries. I dropped off groceries to my mother, and I've been giving that woman a hug my entire life. And it was hard to not be able to give her a hug. And that's something that I did take for granted. Like, I would give her a hug and I'm like, all right, Ma, I'll see you later. And now it's just, I looked at her and I'm like, I can't hug you. And this is hard.
And this is a person that you love. I mean, this is like, yeah, it's not right. It doesn't feel right not to like embrace our parents.
It doesn't. No. And so, but then understanding like why I'm not doing it. And she understands too, but that doesn't make it any easier. But it does mean that when this is over, I will appreciate those hugs all the more. I saw another meme, too much time on social media right now, but I saw another meme of this guy was saying, all my friends are saying they can't wait to do this. They can't wait to go to the movies, go to concerts. And I can't wait to hug my parents again. And I'm like, I'm right there with you. I can't wait to hug them again. I miss doing that. So those are, I think we'll have an appreciation for those kinds of things. Yesterday here, the sun came out. It's out now. I appreciate that more because the first week of being cooped up, it was cloudy and rainy. And I'm like, I can't do this, Lord.
How can we get through this? Right. Yes. Agreed. Come on, spring.
Yes. So I'm super grateful for the sun being out. I'm teaching our girls how to write letters. So on one of my grocery trips, I picked up some stamps, praise the Lord, for grocery stores that sell stamps. And so I'm like, we're going to write letters to everybody, going back to the things that we haven't done in a long time, playing board games, starting new hobbies if we can. I'm really optimistic for the future, and I'm hopeful that we'll come out of this better, loving each other more, caring for each other more. My mom said that her neighbors, they text her to make sure that she's okay and doesn't need anything, even though they know that we're here. And that means something to me because she's less than 10 minutes away, but 10 minutes can mean a lot. And to know that somebody's right there checking on her for me as well means the world. So I'm hopeful for our future.
You know, I had a colleague share this this message with our team today, and it's from a counselor as well, or social worker. I believe it's a social worker, not counselor. But it said this: try this perspective shift. instead of seeing social distancing as travel ban, with travel bans as panic, or try seeing them as acts of mass cooperation intended to protect the collective whole. The plan is not about individuals going into hiding, but it's a global deep breath, an agreement between human beings around the planet to be still.
Yeah.
And be still in hopes that the biggest wave can pass without engulfing too many of the vulnerable amongst us.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wasn't that, amazing? But I'll tell you, this has been an amazing conversation with Dr. Glass. I can't thank you enough, Yvonne, for joining with us today to share your thoughts. We so greatly appreciate it and appreciate the work that you do in your life and this being your life's calling. You're just a special treasure to Ashland Theological Seminary as well to all of us at the university. In the days and weeks ahead, we look forward to having more of these conversations every Sunday and Wednesday with experts from Ashland, talking about the things that are on all of our minds. If you have any topics or areas that you would like to hear more about, drop a note in the comment section below and we'll address those. But together we know that we're going to get through this. Thank you so much, Yvonne. God bless you, stay well, and just thank you. We really appreciate your insights today.
Thank you. Same to you. Stay well. God bless you too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.